Hello, 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 and welcome to the Impact Podcast. We are so excited that you are here. I am Aaliyah Johnson Roberts, and we have with us
Dr. Obiama Martin.
And Damaris Alvarado Rodriguez.
yes, we are your favorite people that you like to see. Impact Podcast. So we are talking about today, a couple of things because my friends and we all kind of represent something different, right? At all times, we kind of represent a different piece of the puzzle, but we wanted to talk about pivoting, right? So at first, we're talking about it, and I said, okay, what is your pivot? And we found out that I represent the love in the pivot, okay? Because usually I'm kind of in the middle of my two firecracker friends here. So I was coined as being the love in the midst of the pivot. And Dr. Obiama is the peace in the pivot. And Damaris is
It's the war in the pivot.
right, and not war in a negative sense, because you definitely want this soldier next to you during the war, okay? Because she's going to fight for you and with you. So not in a negative sense, but so really the purpose of having this conversation about pivot is I would think all of us, especially these last couple of years, have had to really pivot even when we didn't want to, when it hasn't felt comfortable. The pandemic shined the light on a number of different things, especially in our businesses, in childcare, and our lives overall. So we have had to pivot, and we kind of wanted to talk about just the realities of maybe some experiences that we've been kind of faced with and some strategies on how we've navigated that and some strategies that maybe you can use in pivoting no matter what comes your way. So ladies, what's been going on for you lately where you have found yourself having to pivot, having to fight, having to show love, find your peace, whatever that may be? What would you say, Dr. Obiama Martin?
So I would say, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, because I look frozen. All right. So I would say that just really understanding the seasons. And I say that from the perspective of after every fall, there's a winter. After every winter, there's a spring. And after every spring, there's a summer. And so when I begin to really pause to think about how seasons are consistent, right? See, seasons are consistent. They're so consistent that even when, because we're in Philadelphia, we may be in spring, but the weather may not necessarily reflect spring, or we may be in winter and the weather may not necessarily reflect winter. However, we know just because of the calendar that we are in winter or we are in spring, and we know that at the end of the quarter there's going to be a change. Well, the same thing in our lives, and same whether we're talking about business or professional, there are seasons of change. And when we think about our business specifically, there are highs and lows, and especially when it comes to staffing, and especially when it comes to clients, right? When it comes to enrollment, all those different things, there are seasons. And so there are some seasons that last longer than others, and there are some seasons that's quicker than others. But what I found is that when we are able to recognize the seasons that we are in, that will determine how long that season lasts. And that's how I have found to have peace in the middle of the pivot.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I
You
guess
came out
I
strong.
guess I guess I'm going to talk about my war in the pivot, right? I'm always looking for the next move, right? And
Mhm.
how am I going to? I look at what's going on during my season, right? Do I need to wear a coat? Do I need to take off the coat? Do I need to wear a lighter jacket? Do I need to wear, a scarf maybe? And looking at that and preparing, I love preparing for the next move and looking for the future. How is that move going to impact the future is really important for me. When I say war, I mean, there are sometimes boundaries, right? That are set in front of you. And I like to push them aside, push the curtain to the side and be like, I'm walking through. Or, if a door is closing in front of me, I'm going to knock on that door until it's open, right? And when I create these things in my head and say, okay, well, I'm going through staffing shortages. Um, how am I going to connect? How I'm going to get, the right people into our doors through, service to families in the communities that I serve. And so I pivot, right? The magic word, I pivot. I go into the communities. I go do things a little bit differently. I make connections. And that is something that it takes talent, I want to say, right? Because you got to think about what connections are you making today that's going to affect me long term,
Yes.
right? This is not short term stuff, right? We're not just opening up doors, classrooms just for 3 months or maybe just for the year. I'm talking about how I'm going to get, maybe some workforce development. And if we're doing workforce, how are we going to be sustainable and provide these people opportunities to come through our doors and become teachers, long lasting teachers that want to stay? And what do I do to keep them to stay in this organization?
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So
Mhm.
those are like wars, because there are a lot of barriers. And when I say wars, my wars is because we do bump into, as early childcare providers, into a lot of barriers. So many, right? And when we think that we have a plan, a workable plan, boom, you get knocked down 20,000 times,
Mhm.
right? Then you have to kind of pivot, figure it out, right? Figure out, okay, well, that's what I want, and I'm going for it. No
Yes.
matter how many times you tell me no, because that's like threatening me with a good time. Once you tell me no, I'm like a brat. I'm like a kid. I'm like, yeah, no, me, no, you're kidding me. I'm gonna go and do it. So that's basically how I pivot.
Absolutely. I
And
love it.
I love that. I was going to say, I love that because what you're saying, just for clarity to the listening audience, is that there is war in a pivot, meaning that there's an internal war, there's an external war, there is a systemic war, there's a political war, there's a bureaucratic war. So there's all these type of wars that are going on as a professional, as a business owner, as a leader that you will face. And so Damaris is speaking to all of the wars that are happening in the middle of the pivot. And you can choose to either say, I'm coming after you with a vengeance, or I'm just going to let it ride,
Go with
right?
the
So it
flow.
really
Go with the
just
flow.
depends,
Let me tell
right?
you
Go with the
something.
flow.
Something my husband told me. When it started the pandemic, I felt just like everybody else, right? I was fearful. I was lost. I didn't know what was going to go on with the businesses. Everything. My children, my everything. And at one point, I I went into this depression mode, and I looked at my husband and said, "You know what? That's it. I'm going to close the doors. I'm going to give up." Right? Which is
Mhm.
not in my vocabulary.
Mhm.
And
It's
my
not your
husband looked,
DNA.
it's not in my DNA, right? But I was allowed to feel like that, I guess, for 24 hours, because that's all my husband gave me, 24 hours. Um, and then he looked at me and he said, "Let me explain something to you. Where there's war, there's money.
Mm.
Now go figure out how you're gonna make that money."
That's all he had to say,
Right?
huh?
That's all
Mhm.
he
Period.
had to say.
Oh,
Period.
yeah.
Right? And one thing I tell you about a lot of people don't even know I'm married, but I have a wonderful husband. We understand each other. He understands me. He's a hustler like me. He speaks like me, a little bit more rigid. Um, but he's amazing, and he knows I'm going to give you these 24 hours, right? Of you feeling sorry for yourself because you deserve it, right? It's a lot, right? And everybody that's went through the pandemic, through businesses and childcare and everything, you know exactly how what I'm talking about, right? Those moments where you're like, I'm gonna give up. This isn't even worth it no more. I'm over it, right? So I had that moment, but then I understood the message.
Yes.
Where there's war, there's money, and I
Right.
said, you know what? I'm okay. I'm ready for that war. So I
Yeah.
woke up the next day like a warrior, right? I kept all of my, I was talking to someone before this podcast, and I think I was telling you, Aaliyah, and they were asking me, what do you do to keep your staff employed? How did you keep, everyone, and I don't celebrate. I try not to throw that into providers' faces because I do understand, and I consider myself an ethical person. So I don't like to throw in people's faces like, hey, I'm fully staffed. Um, but I mentioned, and so let me explain this to you. When the pandemic happened, right? Um, when everybody was scared and nobody knew what was happening, if they were going to lose their lives, everybody was like fearful for their own safety, um, monies, not having a job. I closed Children's Playhouse down and kept all of my staff employed and paid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And up to this day, the staff that are with me through those times always bring that to light.
Yes.
My
Yes.
employer invested in us during the most difficult time. I will always be appreciative of that. And that's what it is, right? I pivoted and I said, I'm investing in my team. I'm going to really, and I've always done that, just
Yeah.
a little bit differently now. Now, what's the next level, right?
Yeah.
What's the next level?
And I think so it's interesting because that's actually where I was going to go with, right? I was coined with love, right? And so it made me think of something that literally happened today. And I think it is similar to what you're saying, because when you treat people right and you exude love and you care about them and it's genuine, then it comes back, right? It comes back. So we are, going through a transition with some staff, and one of my key team members just transitioned out. Nothing negative or anything. She had a great opportunity, but so today was our quarterly meeting. So we have it every quarter, and at the beginning of it, it's offsite. It's at one of our it's offsite at another location. So we show up, and usually when we go, we started off by talking about our core values, and we usually share who's going to share the core values. So unbeknownst to us, we are sitting there, and she says, "So I have an email for you guys," and the email is from her, and she, I do not cry easily. I am not one to cry, but it was so beautiful. First of all, she's not with us anymore, but she thought about us to say, it was my turn, and I want to make sure that I share the core values because this is what this organization did for me.
Oh
And
my
for each
God.
of us, she had a message on how we impacted her life and how this organization and their core values, how it was exuded so much that I have to be here in spirit to share with you guys the core values.
Oh my God. Yeah, was everybody bawling? I don't
All of
even
it.
know if I would have been able to
All of
continue.
it. I was like, and it was the most beautiful gesture because again, so and the other part is we were, we emailed her to check in. She started her new job Monday, and we didn't hear anything. And I was like, so she had emailed us too, like, guys, I dropped my phone in the store the other day. My phone is broken.
Oh,
So, but it's like, but in that moment where we're coming in, so this is what I was thinking about, even when Damaris shared about the war and everything, it came to mind, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready, right? So when the war comes, I already
Yep.
had some things in place. I had some systems in place, and I had some, processes in place. So for us, our quarterly meeting is where we're already preparing to get ready for the next quarter. And depending on what happened, we can pivot because we already know we're coming specifically to prepare for the next quarter. we don't know what would have taken place, right? So when we came into this meeting today, I didn't know that we would be preparing to have to fill these slots, these staff members. So coming in, which kind of felt a little different because we're short a team member, it really set the tone. And I think it reignited the fire. Like, this is who you are. This is who you are. And it was like, oh my God. So it totally changed how we felt about approaching this meeting, because it was like, oh my gosh, like, but this is the type of stuff that we do every day, that it comes back in the moment that you need it. And it allowed us to, to kind of get reignited and say, this is how we're about to approach this next quarter. And the plans that we made at the end of it, I was like, I didn't even know we were going to walk away with these plans and these new people in place and these processes that we're about to put in place. So I think love in itself can be a part of the pivot, because sometimes what you had done for someone else comes back around, and you still have a partner, right? We create these powerful partnerships and these divine connections that ultimately set you up so that you could prosper during your pivot. That's what I say on that.
You're such a beautiful person, Ali, I swear. You have this soul and this spirit that just calms me. You're such a great, both of you guys are just such a great balance for me. Today I'm laughing, because my director was clearly upset and she was just so angry and she had a really stressful day. And she broke down and started cursing, which she never does in front of me, by the way. And Biama was there, and Biama hugged her, and I'm laughing, and I laughed, and she looked at me, and I said, I am so freaking proud of you right now that you released it, and I laughed because I know she's not a cursing type of person, and I said to her, you do what you got to do, and if the cursing that you need to do, lock yourself in the in that room, and you curse up a storm. Needless to say, at the end of the day, I did follow up with her just to make sure she was okay. And I said, listen, let's now look at the cup halfway full, right? So, yes, are your staff, ready where they need to be? No, they're not, right? They need some extra support, right? But we knew that, right? This is just a gauge of where they at. Biama was doing I think it was a Netters or a Nacy, and we're gonna take them where they need to be, and it's going to take time, and don't think, and this is where the pivot comes in, right? As an owner, right? I said, don't think that you're in this by yourself, right? Because amongst many other people, you work for an organization that your executive director, the person that signs your check, came in to be your kitchen staff just so you didn't have to do that.
Oh, I love that.
I'm the person that signs your check. You think I need to be here?
Yeah.
Right? Or, you know what I mean? In other organizations that you might work for, they don't come out their office.
Yeah.
Right?
And here's the beautiful thing too, Damaris, for the both of you guys, is that the pivot for both of you guys is being able to what I have observed in terms of your leadership, right? Your leadership is everything, which is why you attract the people that you attract, because your investment in your people is at such a high level that is not even like, I hardly see it. And I'm in programs all the time. I hardly see the investment that the two of you have in your families, in your staff, in your program, your core values, your quality, and it shows. And you guys advocate for your staff. You're in it because you really care about them, you invest in them. And so what was beautiful, because I have a story for you too, Aaliyah, because I was at your I left the Bears and then went to you. So what was beautiful about the moment, which I so appreciated, is that your director, Damaris, was really having a moment. And I thought it was just so beautiful and important because in that moment, you and I both was able to be community for her. We
Mhm.
were, because she was really feeling like what was happening was a reflection on her. And,
Yes.
and in that moment, it was almost as if her job was at stake because of somebody else's negligence or foolery or whatever, because that's how she was internalizing it.
Okay.
And we're both like, baby, welcome to being a director. This is the director's journey, right? And just to think about how many directors don't ever get that from their boss.
That's good.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? How many directors never get that? Like for Damaris to laugh, like
Yeah.
she was really in breakdown, right? And so like the beauty of
Yeah.
the person that's signing your check being able to have this moment, not judge you, not point the finger, not shame you, not none of that. Like that moment today was so beautiful, Damaris, and I believe it made all the difference, for her.
It really did. It
Yeah,
really did. Obiama, after that conversation, obviously today, I went back to tell her, don't think that I was laughing at you. She's like, no, I know you were, and you actually made me laugh. And I said to her, now let's think, right? I said, what did you do and what did you learn?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then she said, well, I already had a meeting with those two people and I already created this thing and I had this idea and I'm going to give them this resource. And she already had it mapped out of
Awesome.
what she was going to do without me even, because I came in with already thinking, oh, okay, let me give her some resources so she can help her, right? Navigate this process. Guess what? She shut me up. Like I was like, all right, cool. She already met with that team. She already did XYZ. She needed that moment,
Yeah.
right? To just break down, do whatever. And that was her mental moment. And I said, and I love that you did that. I just found it funny that you was cursing because I've never seen you do that. But yes, if that's what needs to happen, then that's what needs to happen. So let's do it. We can curse up a storm. I don't care. Um, but it was really great. She was more relaxing towards the evening, and then to top the cherry off, a kid fell down and had an accident in the center and hit his nose, and she was like, oh gosh, I gotta go now. I gotta go do it, an incident report. I said, okay, well, I hope the rest of your day goes well. And that was it. Back to business, right? So again, these are things that even my the leaders in there, and watching them grow as leaders, and I say to them, I mentioned this at one of our leadership classes, when you're a leader and you're in a directors, don't be expected to be invited to the barbecue, right? Not everybody's gonna like you, not everybody's gonna think, and you gotta have tough skin. That's what it is, right? You need to learn also how to connect. You need to learn not only to look at the negatives that's happening, but look at the positives. And I had to tonight remind her of what I'm looking at positives. I said, as the owner of this organization, I am looking at my directors are communicating effectively with their staff,
Yes.
right? They are providing attention to the staff. They're keeping the children safe. They have the curriculum going. What else do you think I want? You keeping my doors open. You keeping the enrollments up. What is it? I'm not. Listen, I cannot say anything. So what? One person didn't wash his hands or her hands. Guess what? We're going to keep training them until they wash their hands until those hands fall off,
Yes.
right.
right? I said, but at this very given moment, you are doing the very best that you can. And here's the beautiful part. You got me.
Yeah.
I rearranged my whole entire schedule today. It's Wednesday. I've moderated a few ECE summits. I had a couple of other meetings. I had my own, other work to do as well. And I rearranged my whole entire schedule to be here to support you
Yes.
because I knew that I wasn't going to leave you on your own because I knew this week was going to be rough for you.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
you
And I
know what
hear.
yeah, and that is how you keep your staff. You have to show people that you are invested in them,
Yes.
not with some phony videos, not with some, hey, come here, the hook. We call it the hook, right?
Yeah.
right? These employees come into interviews. An employee today told me that they come into these interviews, they portray, employers portray this beautiful scenery, they hook them, and then that's it. It's the hook, right? But it's nothing after. Man, I got teachers now, and I'm like, hey, I think you would be beautiful at doing this. Here's a PQuas application. Let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm filling out PQuas application. I'm not afraid of losing people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
And
afraid of
the
losing
big part
people.
too
Right.
of
I'm
what we're
afraid of.
talking about is, and I think this is a part of the pivot, is this preparation. And you spoke about that even with the seasons changing, right? Like if we already have these things in place, right? The season, and Damaris brought up wearing the coat and the hat, like having these things already in place for when we need them. The Pequots, having our staff already trained and prepared, the succession plan, having
Yes.
processes and systems in place, so that no matter what happens, right, we might take a moment, we might take those 24 hours to cry or to make the phone call to our community, but we're coming back. We're coming back because we already have some things in place. We just need to take a step back, connect back to our why. We always have to do that. Look at our mission. um, I definitely think another strategy in pivoting too is really getting to the bottom of the real issue. Because sometimes if we're having this, staff retention issue or high turnover, sometimes we need to look a little deeper. It's not everybody else. Like sometimes we have to look internally and see what the issue is, and have some strategies in place to make sure that we are connecting and we're communicating with our staff. So I definitely think, that's a lot of what goes into the pivot. But community is one. And I think what Damaris was talking about in creating these great relationships with our, staff and others. It's not just that we're a whole team of, Damaris has a child care program. I have one. That doesn't mean we have to be in competition, right? That we can't share, right? We are a community of child care providers, owners, and we are so much better together. And I
We
think
are
that,
so much better together. Absolutely, absolutely. And when you say community, again, also both of you have many different people coming in and out of your programs to provide additional resources and support, in the classroom to the staff, in addition to the children, which is amazing. And then, the fact that I get to come into both of your centers and provide additional layer of support is like the icing on the cake, but it also shows community because the other thing for me being on the outside as the additional support person for the both of you guys, I was just thinking about how grateful I am to see how the two of you nurture and love on your staff because again there's not many providers who invest at the level that you guys invest in, and I see the evidence like even something else happened with your director last week, Damaris, and I gave her a strategy, and when I gave her the strategy she was immediately closed minded to it based on some historical data. And I simply said to her, I know what has been. I'm just inviting you to try what I'm telling you. And if it don't work, it don't work, but at least you'll know, you'll be clear. And so when I arrived this morning, I asked her, did she have an opportunity to try what I suggested and did it work? And she was like, oh my God, it worked above and beyond. And I had to apologize for the staff person because I clearly misjudged them based on what has happened in the past. And I was just so grateful. I was like, thank you for being open. Thank you for being open. Thank you for being teachable. And then Aaliyah, I come to your staff this afternoon and like the conversations that I got to have in the break room was just so delicious.
oh,
It was so delicious. And they was just like, everybody that participated was just, so grateful. So grateful because again, the reason why I'm there is that mental health component, right? And you never know when they're going to need it, and that's the proactiveness, because some of the staff that was in here was just like, I'm done, I'm burnt out, I'm over it. When I go home, I have nothing to give to my kids. And we just had this delicious conversation, and at the end of it, they was just like, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. So the fact that both of you have taken these proactive, steps to say, let me get ahead of this. Let me get ahead of this storm. Right. And that's about the seasons changing as well, and staff recruitment. When we talk about staff recruitment and the pivot, right? And again, for you, Aaliyah, it's the love, because you love your staff enough to say, I'm not the answer, but I got some resources. I got community. Let me bring in, right? Because I don't know what y'all need, and I don't necessarily need to know what y'all need, but I know somebody.
Yep.
And so I'm telling you, the conversations I had today, I was just like, this is why I'm here.
Yes. And I think it's so timely. And this is definitely a transparent moment. So, with the staffing changes, because we don't experience it a lot, we don't have high turnover. So we have two staff. We have two admin team members. Well, one transition and one is getting ready to transition. So when the team got the news, I could tell that they had some feelings about it. So I said, I called the meeting. I said, I did my rounds, and, I was like, okay, all right. I didn't want to get emotional about it, because I'm like, okay, what is going on? And I like to address stuff right away. I'm like, I want to know, but they were teaching. So I said, I scheduled a meeting for later on in the day. This was yesterday. And I wanted to do a check-in. Check the pulse. And it was also a moment of reassurance, right? So I connected with my director, because I was like, listen, I think we need to address this. And she has such a great idea, which was help to give them a visual. So we have an accountability chart, which shows everybody in the organization, and two people are leaving. In the moment, it feels like, oh my gosh, what is happening? Two people out of this 45 staff member, like, company, two people, like, guys. So we showed them the visual of, this is where we are. And remember, this is where we're going, right? We're all here together. Let's talk about it. I sent out a survey. Because that's another one of my strategies, to make sure that everyone's voice is heard, because not everyone, wants to speak in front of a large group. I wanted to check in. How are you feeling? I asked about, how are you feeling about us as an organization? How are you feeling about the ECE industry? Because everything isn't about us. It could be about the industry. How are you? But then, what are some things that you want us to focus on as an organization over this next quarter? What's some things you guys are frustrated about? And one of the things started coming up just in regards to, like, pay. I also asked them, what are some reasons you think people do leave the organization, right? I wanted to start having these conversations, because ultimately, even one of my staff is going to step up, and they want to start doing some advocacy, which was a great moment for us to start talking about that, because everything is not about us or me, right? It's about people really wanting to explore other opportunities. And so I say all that to say, though, this was a moment that I didn't expect that we had to pivot, but I also had to help support my team, because I couldn't just go to this quarterly meeting and now I'm okay at the end of the day. But you guys, I'm not sure where you are, but I want to check in, reassure you that, right, we're always fine. I let them know, when we do have turnover, we do not just fill a spot with a body. We don't. When I tell you, we pray for God to send us the person for us in our organization, and we are very specific, and we write out all the characteristics, right? We do that avatar activity, and who is the right person for us. And that's how we got our last person, right? I'm like,
hire, what is it? Hire slow, fire fast.
Listen, yes, we do. So we are not going to quickly just bring someone in just to fill the spot. But in this moment of pivoting, I really had to rally. I had to make sure that my team was okay and check in with them and just reassure them this is where we're going, remind them And I didn't expect to have to do that, but it was needed in the moment. And I was like, let me check in. And I did find that, a number of them said in this moment, frustrated, they're sad, and things like that. But we had to kind of come together and have that conversation. And I did tell them too, I promise y'all, I will always show up and do what I'm responsible for. But I do want to charge you guys, and I want to remind you of what you signed up for as well. Because the only way this thing is going to work and we can move this organization forward is if each and every one of us stand up in what we committed to and continue on fighting in this race. So that's the war in the pivot.
That is the war. I was just gonna say that, go girl. I'm also gonna say that those are the strategies that many organizations should definitely adapt. Right,
Mm-hmm.
right. They need to go back to the why.
Yes,
Right?
always.
Why do they have that organization? Just we're always talking about the whys, right? But or I feel like most organizations that I've been working with, or been kind of like networking with, I look at their strategies and I'm like, well, you have none. Right? You have one. You can't just focus on families and children and not focus on staff, right? You have to meet each staff's individual needs just the way you meet each family's and each child's needs, right? So if we're meeting each child's individual needs, how about those of the staff? They are equally as important. It has to have a balance. You can't just be all about money, because guess what? Without teachers, you ain't making money, right? So
That's
you
right.
have to learn how to balance that. It's a balancing act. And yes, you have to provide these platforms and be ready for those uncomfortable conversations and be ready for that self-reflection, right? I've
Oh,
been doing this for 20 years. It's been 20 years. I've had staff that said, I hate you. Okay. Why? Why do you hate me? I just want to know why, right? You don't need to love me. You can leave. So we started doing these stupid exit surveys, which I don't do anymore. I don't do exit surveys anymore with people. I do stay surveys,
oh,
right? We're going to talk about this now. I don't want to know why you leaving me. I want to know why you're here. Let's talk
I
about
don't know
that.
to be honest. I don't know to be honest sometimes
You know
because
what I'm saying? And be honest, I have tough skin. If is it because of the way I am, maybe I'm too direct. So I'll give you somebody else that's a little bit less, direct than I am. So I learn how to do things. Is it because I don't give you enough days? I think one year the staff wanted me to do flex days.
mm,
So I was like, why should I give you flex days? Right? If you're gonna come to me, you gotta, dot your I's and cross your T's, because I want to know, why do you think that on top of 5 holidays, 15 paid holidays, 5 sick days, 5 personal days, I need to give you flex days? Make it make sense to me, right? And if it fits in the budget, you got it. Listen, they went and they created this whole little console, because they know how I am, right? And they they wrote out this whole plan and came and presented it to me. And the way they presented it to me, I couldn't say no. I gave them their flex days.
That's
You
awesome.
got it. You
That's
understand
awesome.
what I'm saying? Because you guys went, you talked about what is it that you needed, you advocated for it, and you brought back the why.
yeah. I was going to say the advocacy, right? That's what they
Right? The advocacy is important. Leadership, they created leadership councils all through the centers. The director and this Obiama's thing is working with the directors and their leadership roles. And one of the teachers, which I was pretty surprised to, I saw her name in the leadership, and she's our literacy leader. So she approves all of our books. We do Sunday read alouds for our families, that can't reach books, in literacy. And this person sent me a whole mapping for the whole entire year of every book, everything that matches our DEI. It was such a proud moment, man. I was just
Oh
like,
my God, that is so
yes,
amazing.
yes. And I made sure I acknowledged that,
I,
and thanked her. It was just an amazing thing to see, you know, these people, even the new ones, coming into this environment and saying, wow, no, this is what I'm going to do. And this is what I'm going to be seen. I'm going to be,
Beautiful.
my ideas are welcomed. Right.
And you know what? That goes back to the peace, the war, and the love and the pivot. Because again, you said, right, because both of you operate large organizations, but both of you need your needs are different. So with you, Damaris, you was like, okay, I can see my director and my educational, coordinator is going to need some help, right? And because they were feeling overwhelmed. And I'm like, okay, listen, you don't have to feel this alone. Let's create this leadership council so that you don't have to do everything. You can delegate. And so we worked a good month on developing that leadership council, and the C is working. Like, it's at both locations. It's like it's working at both locations. I was like, do that, y'all. Y'all doing it right. And
And
the
they're rolling with it. They're loving it.
they
They,
rolling with it, right?
they are.
Empowerment. That's empowerment, right? So delegate to elevate, right? That's
Yes, delegate to elevate.
delegate to
Absolutely.
That is it.
Absolutely.
you're empowered. And what I love, even when you said, right, you said this teacher, right, literacy leader, right? Like sometimes we think of leaders as if they have to be, in charge of this large crowd. No, every one of our teachers, staff, I don't care what you do, families, they all can play a part in the leadership. And that again goes back to, in our times where we need to pivot, we need these very people who are a part of our village, including parents or families. But let's not leave them out, right? They are a part of our councils and committees,
Absolutely.
help move our
Absolutely.
programs forward. And sometimes all everyone needs, we talk about equity all the time. All people need is an opportunity. They like, I didn't even know I had that in me. But because I gave you this opportunity to lead, now you're able to lead your family even better. We're able to lead our organization. We're all better together.
which helps with staff morale, staff
Yeah.
retention, and recruitment. Because here's the other thing: now everybody feels seen, they feel heard, and they feel supported. So,
Yes.
also, a lot of times people always think that employee retainment or retention has to do with money. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. If you really focus on developing your people, because the other thing, so two number one reasons why staff leave. The number one reason is not money. The number one reason is how they're being treated.
Oh, absolutely.
How they will leave you for a penny over, like, if you don't know how to talk to them over
Absolutely.
and over and over and over and over again. So the communication is the number one thing. I don't feel like this is a place where I can grow. I don't feel like I fit in. I don't feel like I belong. All these feelings around not being seen, not being heard, not being supported. So the leadership council allowed it equaled the playing field. That was the equity and diversity in the DEI, right? That leadership council met all of that because it's diverse. Everybody is now equal, and everyone now has an opportunity to have a voice. And what was really amazing about it is that, like I'm saying to both the directors, think about the people that excel in a specific thing. Like, if you have one person that is the bomb at doing lesson plans, make them the leader of lesson plans. You have a person that's the bomb at this, make them the leader of that. And that's how the leadership, council was comprised.
Yes. Just
And
put a title on it, a creative title. That's a whole,
yeah.
whole thing.
But sometimes we just overthink things and make it too complicated, when I'm like, no, like, look at
No,
the
listen,
people.
I was looking at the list of leadership roles and the names and everything, and I was looking at the titles, and I was like, oh, yeah, I could see this. I didn't have nothing to do with this, right? All they needed was approval, and I was like, go for it, right? Whatever works for you guys. Um, and when I saw the list, it was one of them, an advocate team leader. One of my teachers, and this one I was, looking at, and I was like, yeah, I can see you doing that. I could definitely see you doing that, coming out to advocate, for the teen, sending her to advocacy meetings. I actually pushed her last year at an event and just put her on the spot because I do that a lot. And I'm like, speak, go, 1, 2, 3, go. And and she did an amazing job. And this year, I was like, yes, you're gonna grow this advocacy component that's in you, right? That I saw in you last year, and now you see it in yourself, right?
Yes.
So now she's the advocate leader. She's learning, about public policy and stuff like that, which is fun. You're right. It's fun because she's learning something that she loves to do. She's passionate about it. Um, so there was a lot of titles that I was looking at the person as matching it, and I was like, oh yeah, I could totally see this person doing that. And it's an amazing gift that, and I'm very proud of my directors in house knowing their staff. That means that they got to know their staff.
Oh,
You
that's cute.
got to know who is working for you. You got to know what they excel in, what they need help in, right? Who they are, right? You don't want to know all their personal stuff, but you got to know your staff. And it
Yes.
was just an amazing experience to see that list of people and knowing that they were picked in those roles because my directors.
Uh-oh. She may be going out.
She, so I want to put a bow on this because we are definitely at our time. Um, what I'm really, really so proud about is that the work that the three of us have been doing over the summer, it is now not only bringing you guys the return, but now we get to teach it in our bilingual leadership fellowship, right? And so the evidence and the results that you two are seeing in your programs, we now get to teach that and share that. And those people that have joined the leadership fellowship. So for those of you that are listening, our next cohort starts in January. And the things that you hear us talk about on this podcast are the things that we get to teach, and it's exemplified, and we have the evidence and the results to say this is what leadership looks like, this is what leadership sounds like, this is what leadership feels like we have that. We got receipts, y'all. We got receipts. And so I'm so excited and grateful that we have the receipts. We're not talking smoke. We have evidence that this
This
is
leadership is
right.
is amazing.
It's
Every
amazing.
class, every end of the class, even during class, I'm like, wow, what an amazing class, an amazing group of people, so many bright people, women, black and brown women in this classroom. Oh my gosh, I am
And the
so honored.
community, the
Yes, the
community. Oh
community
my
that they have,
goodness.
they
It's
helping each other. They're
yes.
reaching out to each other. We've created this community. This cohort one is going to be everything, everything, everything. I just can't. I'm just so proud to be part of that community and see this go through and giving them the opportunities to see leadership in a different way.
And the message is after, right? That gets me every time. The message is like, oh my goodness, that was so good. Oh, it was powerful. And it's like, oh my good, oh my God, it's working. It's working. Especially right for us to have a class and it ends at 8 and you're still, or us to start early on a Saturday morning at
On a
8
Saturday morning at 8
Listen,
a.m. Come on now.
and you
we
come ready with a smile.
they were all smiles. I was looking at them like, okay, what's going on over there? Why you guys are so happy? And they were just so into it. It was just amazing. It was just amazing.
It's a gift, and I just think it's a gift. And the fact that you mentioned it, Obiama, the stuff that we're experiencing, the things that right? We're all just sharing it. We're sharing it so that it can be a gift for others. And we are not keeping it a secret, which is why we have this podcast. The purpose is to impact the community so that you can go impact the corner of your world. That's just what we're doing. That's what we're
And
doing.
I want to also mention something. The diversity in this group is amazing, because I'm really about diversity. Hey, we need to make sure everybody has access. And the group of people is just not owners. We have we have family advocates, we have teachers, we have directors. I believe it was owners as well. So it's like educational coordinators. Like it's a very diverse group of people really having these real conversations about what leadership looks like.
I agree. Here we go. All right. I think we are at our time. I hope this really resonates with you and kind of make you start thinking about how you can approach the time of pivot that you need. We've spoken about love, peace, and war. All right. And it's okay to put that hat on. You can put each one of those. Today it might be war, tomorrow it might be love. I don't know. But these are some strategies that you could use in your programs and your lives. Stay tuned with us. Definitely keep your eye out for the next fellowship. And thank you so much for joining us this episode of The Impact. See you.
Bye.
Bye.